Hi there. In this screencast, we'll take a look at how we can modify our chart of accounts, something I've shown you before in previous videos, screencasts that is, adding a new tax code and creating opening balances or adding opening balances. So you'll notice that we have this little history item on our menu bar. So when this is available, that means that we're in a historical period, so we can freely add balances to accounts. We can add historical transactions to our suppliers and our customers, as well as add items and their count to our inventory. For our suppliers, our customers, and our inventory, that has to match the balance on the general ledger account. So all of the balances from the sub-ledger accounts has to match. They don't there's no communication with those accounts. As in QuickBooks, if you add a balance to a sub-ledger, the general ledger account automatically updates, whereas Sage 50 we have to make sure that those balances are correct. So I'll show you a little bit of that. So first of all, I'm going to modify my chart of accounts. So we get there by choosing company, chart of accounts, and it's presently using this view, display by type. I find it's a little easier if you're going to delete a lot of accounts just to choose this item here. It's easier to see all of the accounts at once. Now you want to remove every single account that you're not using. When you enter a transaction, a list of all of your accounts will pop up when you click on your little drop down. So if you have a bunch of accounts that you don't use, that'll be a very cluttered list. It'll take you extra time to select the account you actually want. So more accounts are a burden to the soul. So we're not going to be using 1030 cash draws. So I can just click on that, and I can use my little, this is supposed to be a little ball of paper going into a trash can, and notice there's also Control R or delete on your keyboard. So I like to just use the delete key. It's the quickest method, but I'll just use this trash can so you can see what I'm doing. And a little dialog pops up, asks me if I want to remove the account. And if you just use Y on your keyboard, so if you don't want to have to grab your mouse every single time, you can basically just toggle between delete and Y. So I'm just going to choose Y on my keyboard, and that says yes. So I'm just going to delete a couple here, and you're free to delete any account that there has been no transactions for, or of course that don't have a balance. So I'm just going to click on this 1067. I'll press delete Y, so I can quickly just delete all of the accounts I wish to delete. And for those of you who are taking my course, I've provided you with a list of all of the accounts that we don't need in my notes on my LMS. So that's basically how you delete accounts. So again, those of you who are taking my course, go ahead and delete everything on the list. And we're going to create a brand new account as well. So the way you create an account, I'm going to go back to my display by type. That's how I like to look at my chart of accounts, when I'm not deleting a huge number of accounts, that is. And in order to create a new account, you use that little book or Control N or File Create, 3 methods. And I'm going to create an expense that doesn't presently exist. This is the structural code, as we saw in a previous video. This is going to be a group account, and the class options are general and admin expense. And I'll save and close. And it should be all right. There we go. But if an account is linked, we won't be able to delete the account. So, for example, if I go down to my liabilities here, my payroll liabilities specifically, these are linked by default. and we'll see what these are for in later screencasts. But we don't have any additional expenses for our employees, so we're going to delete all of these eventually. Again, those of you who are taking my course, you don't have to worry about it if you're just watching this screencast, of course. But I'm going to go ahead and try to delete that 22,234. So I'll use my little trash can, and I get an alert: this account cannot be removed while it's being used as a linked account. So again, this has no balance. No transactions have been posted to this account. However, it is linked in setup settings. So we have to go and find where it's linked in setup settings, remove the link, and then come back and delete it. So I have a bunch of accounts that are linked, and I have a list of those in my notes. So you would remove all of those links so that you can safely delete all of the accounts that we no longer need. I'm just going to do this one. So I'll choose OK. And I'll close my chart of accounts. So setup, settings, and that account was a payroll account that was linked. And if we look at linked accounts here, that was user-defined expenses, and there's that account that I was trying to delete. Again, it's linked. So if you want to delete all of these accounts, again, they all exist on that list of the accounts that I wish you to delete. You have to remove all of the links. There's one at the bottom here as well. So the way you do that is you just hit delete on your keyboard to clear that field. I choose OK. Now I go back to my chart of accounts, and I can delete that account because the link has been removed. I'm going to go and add a new tax code. That is, the GST is included in the purchase price or our sales price. So if we go to setup, settings, sales taxes, tax codes, and we're going to call this one GT. You can call it whatever you like, something that makes sense to you. And we're going to say GST 5% included in price. And then in order to actually choose the taxes that are being used in this tax code, we click on the little finder. And it's GST, taxable, rate 5%, and we're just going to say, yeah, choose is refundable, and that means that tax will be tracked in transactions. So now I'll create a transaction. And I'll pick up the tax. And you see there's the tax amount included in $100. So it's not just 5% because it's included. So now if I look at my report, you see it's actually calculated. That's what we actually spent for those items. This is what we will get back for the GST amount that we paid. I'm not going to process that. I was just testing that out. Now the next thing we'll look at is opening balances. So we have some money in the bank, so I'm just going to add that balance again. While we have that history available, we can quickly just add a balance to any account. So if I go to company, chart of accounts, and for a savings bank account, I can simply just double click on that. I'll go the long way though and use my little pencil. And there's the open balance field again. That'll be available if this is available. and we have that amount in this account. Now, if you have a bunch of balances to add to your accounts, it's best to not leave this dialog by choosing Save and Close, but instead moving to the next account that you want to add the balance for. Otherwise, a little message pops up that says that the difference will be added to retained earnings, and you'll have to choose OK every single time. Let me just demonstrate. So I'll choose Save and Close. It says, in order to balance your accounts, so I have to choose OK. So let me just add a couple more without choosing OK, and we'll see what happens. So I'll go ahead and add my accounts receivable balance, which is on 1200. There it is there. I'm just going to quickly double click on that this time. And the opening balance for that, again, I'm getting this from my notes for those of you who are taking the course. Now, instead of choosing Save and Close, I'm just going to pick up my next account. The next account I want is, now when I go to do that, the next account I want is 1520, by the way, but when I go to do that, I get this dialog. Do you wish to save your changes? Now, I don't want to have to answer a question every single time I enter a balance. That means an additional click. So I'm going to choose Always Save Changes to Records Without Asking. So every time I navigate to my next account, it'll automatically be saved. We can change this option back to the previous option in Setup Settings as well. And I'll choose Yes. And now we'll move to 1520, which is the next account. And that is, I'm going to just change the name while we're here. Furniture. And its opening balance is 23,850. And I'll move to my next account, which is 15530 Appliance. So again, you navigate to the accounts here, you change the name here. A mistake I frequently make is trying to change the name up here. So if you do that, sometimes you get into an error loop that's very hard to get out of. You actually have to shut down the application using Control-Alt-Delete. So make sure you use this to navigate, this to change. I'll choose 1530 here, and this is our appliances. Again, for those of you who are taking my course, I have a list of modifications to make to our chart of accounts, which include what I just did here. And the opening balance is 21,000. Navigate to my next account, 1540, and it no longer asks me whether or not I'm saving. It saves automatically because I answered that question in that manner. Now, one thing about accounts receivable and these three inventory asset accounts is they have to match the subledger amounts, as I mentioned before. So I'm done for now. When I choose Save and Close, all of the retained earnings will be affected by the opposite. And let me just quickly show you the alert that comes up, or the error that comes up if I wish to stop entering history and start working with this data. So you see, the sum of your customer's information does not equal the current balance of account 1200 accounts receivable. So that's what we have to enter, total outstanding invoices. And okay, so I'll create a new customer. And again, I have a list of all of these balances in my notes for those of you who are taking the course. That's where I'm getting this information from. David Jerry. As of, he's been with us since the beginning of the year. And then to add the invoices that he still owes for, and for the historical transactions, you don't enter the transactions that have been paid already. It's only the outstanding transactions. So just invoices. Now, if you make a mistake here and you add the wrong amount, you can safely create a payment for the amount that you made the mistake to adjust that. Otherwise, you can create a backup just before you start entering these subledger amounts, so you can go back to that backup. Otherwise, it's very difficult to fix the mistakes here, so you want to be very, very careful. Again, we're not going to use this data in the future, so if you mess it up, don't worry about it. You won't be able to advance the history properly, but it's of no consequence because we're just trying this out. So this is our invoice number 102, happened on the 15th, no terms, and the amount is $2172.60. Double check that that's correct. That should be January 15th, sorry. And I'll choose record. Close. There's the amount there, and I'll create a new one. This is now we have to do all of this for accounts payables as well, for any amounts that we still owe to our suppliers, as well as all of our inventory assets. So we have 3 sets, which include a bunch of items. Until we have those subledger balances match the general ledger balances, we won't be able to leave the historical period. We can continue doing business and we can enter transactions while that history is still up. However, in order to advance the fiscal year, you'll need to finish entering those balances, as well as some of the reports won't be accurate until the history is complete, of course. So you can continue entering transactions before you finish entering history, but you do eventually want to enter history. And I'm just going to add an invoice for her. And you'll see once I add 2 more invoices, I'm just going to quickly do this and come back. I'm just going to pause the screencast and come back once these invoices have added. You'll see that that error disappears when we go to finish entering history. Alright, so I've added those 4 customers and their outstanding invoices. So if I go to customer aged, should match 15,424.50. $15,424.50, and then go back to history. Now let's quickly do the same with accounts payable. So accounts payable, again, the list in my notes, the balance is $42,87.70, and that has to match the outstanding invoices for the subledger. So I'm going to quickly go back to company, chart of accounts, and for 2100, which is accounts payable, there it is there. You can actually just hit 00 and then press enter on your keyboard, and now you're editing that account as well. The opening balance for that is $42,87.70. I'll double check I got that right. $42,87.70, yep. And now I need to add the balances to the subledger. So we don't presently have any vendors quite yet, so I'll quickly add. I'll add a supplier that we have 2 outstanding invoices with. So I'm going to choose suppliers and purchases. I'll create a new supplier. And this is Design Furniture Manufacturers Incorporated. And we've been doing business with them since the 1st of January. And historical transactions, just like on the accounts receivable side. And their first invoice is DFM, and this is February 11th. Now it's not obvious, there's no real clunk. All that happens is it clears the form. And you don't see a balance owing here, but you do if you look at the back of the home screen that has changed here. Rest assured that it actually did enter the information that you entered. Here is 99236, and record. And there's the balance for design furniture manufacturers. So that's entering accounts payable subledger balances. Let's quickly look at how we can add inventory amounts. So go to inventory and services, choose that. Let me just shrink this so you can see it. Create. The number is A024, and it is a sofa bed. We want to always have 2 of those in stock. Our pricing, we let those go for $18.90. For our preferred customers, $16.75, and I'll keep that at $16.75 for our web price as well. And linked, so again, the asset linked is the general ledger account I just added a balance for. So that has to match the balances of all of the inventory items that use 1520 as a linked asset account. And if you've already modified your chart of accounts, it'll actually say sales, furniture, inventory, furniture. And variance, we're going to use 5100 for all of our accounts, all of our inventory items, I should say. And then under history, we get to enter what we actually have on hand. So this might take a little bit of time in real life. You actually have to go and count all of the inventory in our warehouse before we can have this amount. And then our B200, sorry, our TV stands, C103, our A025 recliners, those will add up to equal the amount that we have in our inventory asset account, again 1520. Now the last thing we'll do is again, for some of our liability accounts for payroll, we have some balances. So those balances have to add up to the amounts, the historical amounts that we've deducted or contributed for our employees. Add the employee, and it's Michael's, Jordan. Notice that this sin is actually works. Birthday we need to record for the purposes of CRA. Sorry, CPP is what I mean. K5, that is. Now, here's the historical amounts here. So again, these have to eventually, if we have more than one employee, they have to match up to the liability balances. Income tax, as well as this one. Those are the amounts that will actually match with the general ledger payroll liability balances. All right, so we covered a lot of stuff. Again, that's modifying our chart of accounts, adding balances to our general accounts, creating customers, suppliers, as well as adding their historical transactions. Again, only outstanding transactions should be added. Any transactions that have been created and paid will exist in the old accounting system. So we only need to add outstanding transactions in this accounting system. Then we looked at adding all of the balances for the subledgers, which match the general ledger accounts, as including payroll liabilities and employee records. So once you've added all of those balances to both the chart of accounts as well as all the subledgers, you'll be able to finish entering history. Again, which will allow us to advance the fiscal year as well as create actual financial statements. Thanks so much for watching.